Thanks for listening to the Good Enough Wellness Podcast. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Emily.
And we're passionate about holistic wellness that real people with real lives can achieve.
We see you out there striving for perfection, but we want you to know that good enough can be good enough.
Before we get started, everything we talk about in this show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Always talk to your healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet, lifestyle, medication, or supplements.
Welcome to Body Literacy 101. School is now in session. Your instructor today is Nutritional Therapy Practitioner Kayla King. This is the 5th of 8 sessions, which will explore the basic functions of the body and get you more comfortable in your own skin. And now, Session 5, the Cardiovascular System.
All right, so before we get started, I just want to go over what the cardiovascular system includes, and that's the heart, veins, arteries, and blood. In this episode, we'll be talking mostly about the heart and a little bit about the veins and the arteries. But yeah, let's just jump right in and get started.
Great, I'm excited.
The heart is an electrical organ since we are electrical beings. Electricity is what causes our heart to beat and pump blood to and from the heart. In order to conduct electricity, we need fluid and minerals. And I'm not a car girl at all, but this analogy, when I heard it, helped it make sense to me. A car battery with distilled water won't hold a charge. It needs mineralized water in order to hold a charge and provide the car with the electricity it needs to run.
This is mind-blowing to me. When you first told me about this, I was just like, it makes perfect sense, but why have we never heard it put that way before?
Yes, I know. It's really crazy to me that we have such almost like a one-for-one comparison, and we don't really ever use it.
Yeah.
So with this in mind, minerals supercharge our bodies. The minerals that are particularly important for the cardiovascular system include calcium and magnesium. Both are needed to contract and relax the muscles, and the heart is a muscle.
Right.
And sodium affects blood pressure, and potassium interacts with sodium for proper blood pressure.
Right. You definitely need both of those and not just one or the other.
Right. Yeah, you don't really ever want to do any minerals without other minerals.
Yes.
So the right side of the heart pumps blood through the lungs, unloading carbon dioxide and picking up oxygen. Then it travels to the left side to pump the oxygenated blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels.
My brain cannot
Absolutely
comprehend. The bodies are so cool.
Yeah. It's like, how do you fit all that into one human body?
It's insane.
So the heart pumps more than 3,600 gallons of blood through our bodies every day. Oxygenated blood travels through arteries, while deoxygenated blood uses veins. Those are like the blue lines in your arms.
Yep, because there's no oxygen left.
Yep. So the heart has a particular affinity for fat as fuel, which, considering conventional thought, seems strange. Diet is absolutely crucial for obtaining these fats, as well as digestion to properly break them down and to distribute them.
Right, and I know this process is pretty complicated. So what do you think about putting an episode on our to-do list all about heart health?
I think that's going to be really, really helpful because there's way more about the heart than I can put into this episode. We're probably going to have to do multiples about heart and fat and all those kinds of things, cholesterol, everything.
The big ones.
Yeah. And speaking of cholesterol, why is there so much talk about cholesterol in relation to heart health? We can think of cholesterol as the body's Band-Aid and doctor. The liver stores it to send out to sites of injury or inflammation to cover it until it has had time to heal. This kind of cholesterol is known as LDL cholesterol, and you'll hear it referenced as the quote-unquote bad cholesterol.
I know, I feel like I'm supposed to be booing right now.
Yeah. Once it has done its job of healing the injury, it returns to the liver as HDL, or quote-unquote good cholesterol. Calling LDL bad and HDL good is like calling the ambulance that's going to the site of an accident a bad ambulance, and the ambulance returning to the hospital as a good ambulance.
Yeah, that's so short-sighted.
Yeah. I've also, I was thinking about this whenever I was going through school. It's like blaming the person on the scene of an accident for causing the accident when really they were there to
just helping.
Fix it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you must be the bad guy. No, I'm the police officer.
But you're always here when something bad happens. Like,
yes.
No, that's not quite how it works.
You don't see, it's like you never see cholesterol and a bad incident not in the same room together.
Right.
So the real question to be asking when it comes to cholesterol levels is, why is the body sending out LDL cholesterol? Like, why do you have such a high concentration of LDL cholesterol? Why is there injury or inflammation?
Right. It's probably not the eggs you're eating.
Probably not. So some common causes of injury or inflammation that we can think about when we see high LDL cholesterol. Blood sugar dysregulation or excess stress hormones can make some inflammation in the body. Excess omega-6 fatty acids, so your seed oils or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Trans fats, very inflammatory. And fun fact about trans fats,
these are never fun.
If there's less than 1 whole gram of trans fats per serving size, the manufacturers are not required to put trans fats on the label. So if you ever see PAM, like the spray stuff,
yep.
The serving size is like 1/16 of a second spray, which is impossible to do. It's because that's how small the serving size has to be to have no trans fats listed.
The side eye, I can't even tell you.
So that's a fun fact.
It's never a fun fact.
No. Other things that can cause injury or inflammation in the cardiovascular system: mineral imbalances, environmental or dietary toxin exposure, poor sleep, lack of exercise, smoking, stress, all those things.
It's so interesting because a lot of those sound pretty familiar to things we've already talked about, and I love that you can't isolate one system from another. I mean, it can be frustrating sometimes, I guess, but for the most part, it's really encouraging to know that when you're trying to address an issue in one area, like, your overall health is going to tick up. You can't just address one and leave the other systems poorer for it. Yes.
So, yeah, really highlights that concept of the body being a whole system. And we have systems within the body. That's why we're going through different systems, but they all rely on each other for optimal health.
Yeah. Yep.
And we don't give stress enough credit for the damage it's doing in our bodies. I think people just want to be like, stress. Yeah, stress. But
well, in this Western culture, I think stress is seen as, like, if something is stressful to you, it's because you're too weak to handle it. And, we talk all the time, because mental health is pretty important to us. It's just because something doesn't feel stressful doesn't mean it's not a stressor. And all that stress still matters. I can be doing all the mom things and loving it and doing well at it, and it's still a stressor on my body. That doesn't change that.
Yeah, that's something to remember, is stress is not always bad. We can have good stress too. If you find out you're pregnant and, like, you get excited, or if you buy a new house and you're excited, that's still stress on the body.
It's still
an uptick of those stress hormones. Riding a roller coaster, tons of fun, very stressful.
Sure. Not to get controversial, but like cold plunging.
Yes.
That is a stressor. That is not reducing stress.
Yeah. That's how it works, is we feel good when we have stress hormones coursing through our bodies. That's why you get runner's high. That's stress hormones.
Yeah.
Cold plunging gives you the stress hormones, and you feel really good. Even certain diets, you start running on stress hormones, and it feels really good.
They feel real good till they don't.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention about cholesterol before we moved on is that your body will produce cholesterol based on the amount that you consume.
Okay.
So if you eat a lot of cholesterol, your body will not make more cholesterol from other nutrient inputs. if you don't eat much cholesterol, like you have really low dietary cholesterol, your body will produce more. And that can cause stress too, because your body is like scraping and pulling nutrients from other places in the body to try and make more cholesterol to make up for the cholesterol you're not eating.
Right. Like it always has this certain number it needs. So if you're not eating it, your body's going to get it somewhere.
Yeah. And it can be to the detriment of places like your heart that need fat for fuel. So I thought that was really important to mention in the cholesterol conversation, because people are like, well, I'll just cut cholesterol because, my cholesterol numbers are wacky. Well, you cut cholesterol because your numbers are wacky. Now your body is just going to stress out and try to produce it from somewhere else.
Yeah. Which I imagine that could also throw off your mineral balance and a lot of other things too.
Yeah, it can really have a big impact on other systems of the body.
So what are some good enough ways we can support our cardiovascular system without going off the deep end here?
We can consume enough fat, and particularly in the right ratios. So what I mean by that is in our modern society, we tend to eat a lot more omega-6 fatty acids. They're a type of polyunsaturated fatty acid. You may have, if you've been in the health space, you may have seen the demonization of polyunsaturated fatty acids, or the PUFAs. And they're not evil. They're not all bad. We do need some of them. They are an essential fatty acid. But in our modern world, with a lot of our modern foods, we're just getting them in a lot higher ratio than we ever have in human history.
Right, yeah.
And we have reduced the amount of saturated fat in the diet, and we do need some saturated fat in the diet as well.
Yeah, so we're talking butter, we're talking tallow, lard,
yeah, all the good
egg
ones.
Yolks. What else am I missing? All those good things.
Usually saturated fat comes from animals.
Yeah, any kind of animal fat.
Yep, whole fat dairy products have saturated fat, and interestingly enough, so does cacao.
Oh,
Cacao
interesting.
is a
I wouldn't have thought about that, but that makes sense to me.
Is a good source of saturated fatty acid. A lot of
Say
times,
no more.
sometimes the studies, like research studies on saturated fat, they'll use cacao or chocolate.
Interesting, yeah.
As a source of saturated fat. So good balance of fats in the diet, reducing the inflammatory fats, the omega-6s, and trans fats in particular. Now that you know our fun fact about trans fats, you know that just because it says no trans fats does not necessarily mean that it's no trans fats. The way you'll know is if it has hydrogenated oils or partially hydrogenated oils, or generally if it's any kind of seed or vegetable oil in a bottle that's clear, sitting in the light, has been kind of destroyed, and those turn into trans fats. Or if it's a fat that normally would be liquid and is now a solid, that's a trans fat.
Yes, something that's denatured.
Yes. So balancing minerals can be really helpful for supporting heart health, particularly magnesium, calcium, sodium, potassium. There's way more when it comes to mineral balancing than I can go into in here, but just know that working on making sure that your foods, your hydration, mineral rich, can go a really long way. Do not fear salt. There's a lot of studies showing that the higher salt that we have in the diet, the better our cardiovascular system functions, and that is also very contrary to conventional thought. But there's lots of studies showing that salt has been used therapeutically to heal and cure heart disease.
Yes, so cool. Definitely salty people over here.
Yeah. Limiting and reducing environmental and dietary toxin exposure, so that can look like focusing on the EWGs, Clean 15 or Dirty Dozen, making sure that we're eating organic where it counts, not exposing ourselves to pollutants, secondhand smoke, plastics,
cleaners,
anything.
Beauty products.
Yes.
Which that's probably going to be a whole conversation in itself, because that can feel very overwhelming.
Yeah. And I mean, none of this is to say you have to cut it all out completely and live under a rock and use only mud, but
these are just ideas.
Yeah.
Don't take this whole list and say you need to check all of them off, but pick a few that feel attainable.
Yeah, these are definitely ways to start. Making sure you're sleeping well and sleeping through the night. This can have a lot of root causes, but sleeping enough can be a great place to start. Working on your sleep hygiene, dark, cold room, no screens before bed, that kind of stuff. Exercising. The heart is a muscle, and you work it and it becomes stronger. You don't want to overwork it or overdo it, just like you wouldn't do that to any other muscle on your body, your bicep or anything like that.
Yep.
But exercise is really, really important for heart health. And then reducing stress wherever you can. And again, that's so
it's very
nebulous.
Subjective, and it can be intimidating to think about reducing your stress, because I think everybody jumps to like, I'll just quit my job, and it's like, well, we need money too, so that's not reducing stress.
Financial stress is also very significant.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and maybe that looks like, getting out of debt, or maybe that looks like saying no to things more. It can look like all kinds of things to reduce your stress. You still have to keep all your children. You still have to go to work, usually.
Yes.
But finding ways to reduce your environmental stress, or your if it wouldn't be environmental stress, that would be toxins. What would you call it? Your day-to-day stress, I guess.
Emotional stress, even. You can go just about anywhere on Google and find the stress bucket, like worksheets or analogies, and it's like, just start listing out things that cause you stress.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't realize all the things that can cause us stress. And you can start with things like your relationships, or your finances, or your food, or, myriad of things. But
I highly recommend getting rid of the perfectionism stress first.
Oh.
And hopefully we can help you with that and not make it feel unattainable.
Yeah. So this is a very high-level view of the cardiovascular system. Obviously, it doesn't cover everything that we could talk about, and know that there are more episodes coming. We would love your feedback if there's something in particular you would like to hear about. I love nothing more than a deep dive, so if you want to know about it, I'm your gal. We just wanted to give some practical tips going out of this that you can begin to work on and implement into your own life.
This was great. Thank you for listening to the Good Enough Wellness Podcast.
To learn more about my one-on-one packages, join my mailing list and follow me on Instagram at Kayla King Wellness.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Good Enough Wellness Podcast feed wherever you listen to podcasts. You don't want to miss an episode.
Join our community over on Instagram at Good Enough Wellness Podcast to learn about upcoming episodes and to interact with the Good Enough community.
The Good Enough Wellness Podcast, because good enough can be good enough.
Well, that's good enough for me.
Me too.